So, when I first saw the Legionnaire, my initial reaction was not positive, to say the least. But of course, I was in the middle of traveling to go visit family. It was a long weekend up here in Canada, and I'm actually glad that I didn't get to make a video because I had more time to think about it. Now, this is a ship that is coming into Star Citizen. Let's say that it came in next week or next patch or whenever. It would be coming into Star Citizen with a lot of the precursors required for its activity not quite in game. But we could use that to snipe on the ship and to make fun of the ship. But the truth of it is that the ship, it does solve a problem with boarding. It does solve a problem. It's not CIG selling a solution to a problem that they have intentionally created, which kind of has happened before. But in the case of this ship, if you look at the projection coming out of the front where it connects to the docking port, we're going to focus in on that in a little bit, but that is kind of one of the core features. Now, my personal feeling is I would have used this as an opportunity to revisit the Valkyrie, correct some of the deficiencies in the design of that ship, and create a variant of a ship that already exists in game, already works, and I mean, honestly, is a pretty decent platform. But CIG kind of went this route, and ultimately, I'm kind of glad they did for a number of reasons. So, while my initial reaction was quite negative, my spending time looking at it and kind of understanding where it kind of came from, I do feel that this is CIG stepping in the right direction. This is CIG making a pretty smart move. Not exactly how I would have played it, but ultimately I think that their solution would be better than the solution that I would have come up with. Now, what I mean when we're looking at this tunnel that is projecting out of the front of the ship that connects to the docking port that allows you to walk from one ship to the other, this is absolutely central to one of the biggest problems with boarding an enemy ship, which is transitioning from the inside of your ship out into 0G and then into the other ship. Oftentimes when you make this transition, as you leave one physics grid and step onto another, your character tumbles onto the ground. So imagine if you're playing any current FPS, you know there's somebody hiding in this room and you have to go dig them out because of whatever gameplay mechanic. That person automatically kind of has the drop on you, so you would have to be really quick and really lucky to kind of get them. Now add to the fact that as soon as you enter in that room, you are more than likely going to tumble all over the ground. That's not really a great prospect for FPS action. Now, of course, back in the days of the OG Cutlass, we did have something of a solution to this problem. But I'm going to be honest with you, I think that the solution with the OG Cutlass, there's so many things to love about this ship, and you guys know I love the OG Cutlass, but its boarding mechanic was not very well thought out, especially as the game aged and as new mechanics came into place and physics grids and all that. It became very obvious that the OG Cutlass, apart from a few limited scenarios, was actually going to be a very problematic ship to use for boarding. Now, you might be saying that, but that's the primary function of the ship. That's what CIG designed it for. That's why it has that docking port. But once again, if you think about how that docking port was aligned to the physics grid that you would be mating up to, let's say in the case of the 890 jump, let's say you even had a telescoping tunnel out of the bottom of the ship that connected to that, you would still be at a right angle. Your up and down would be at a right angle to the ship's interior up and down. So jumping through that gate through the bottom of the original Cutlass would in fact be putting you into a different physics grid that would make basically the floor be beneath you or underneath your back or directly in front of your face, so you would immediately tumble as you went through. Now, if you were mating up to something like a Caterpillar, which has a vertical docking port, then you could just drop down into the ship. That kind of creates its own problem, but it would be a little bit more manageable than kind of moving in and then automatically swapping to another physics grid where lying down is standing and standing is lying down, so to speak. And so, as much as I love the original Cutlass, and even now looking at these very old photos from 2013-ish, from the original hangar module too, mind you, I do have to admit that this was a problematic design, and this was kind of an issue in the design. And really, the Legionnaire solves this issue. Now, a lot of people may not perceive this issue immediately until they've thought about the whole problem as I've outlined it, and they go, oh, actually, yeah, you're right. You know, when you're trying to board a ship, even from 0G, of course, the try-hard, super cool player is going to tell you, well, I've got it all down to a science, really, and, I just tiptoe in real slow, and I never fall down because I'm a pro. But in the heat of the moment, guns blazing, we'll see about that, right? You have to be honest about these things. Now, there's a lot of ways that CIG could have gone with this ship, and they could have gone the Drake Cutlass Steel way, which is say, oh, brand new ship, new opportunity to take, Anvil's version of the Cutlass and charge an extra $100 for it. But they didn't. The base version of this comes in at about $100. I think, yeah, it's $100 for the ship minus game package with LTI, which also makes it a fairly decent and accessible LTI token to upgrade through the sale into something better that you may want to have LTI on. And that is a pretty damn good thing itself. And truthfully, charging $100 for this ship, I feel that that's kind of a bargain. And it does keep it in line with it kind of being Anvil's answer to the Drake Cutlass. I dig that idea. Also notice the VTOL engines, all of that goodness that can be realigned to normal flight parameters. It's a well thought out and well designed ship. I really solidly dig this. I dig Anvil's version of the Cutlass. I always wish that there were more ships in this area, and to see CIG populating it with a ship that is definitely solid, I'm all for this. I really am. Would I prefer that it was flight ready? 100%. 100%. But honestly, if someone were to tell me they bought the Drake Cutlass Steel back when that came out, I'd be like, dude, you threw your money away. This, nah, cool. I honestly, it is 100% a solid ship. Looking forward to this ship being brought into the game, it depends. If this ship does have a role in Squadron 42, I could see it. Truth is, it does come from a fairly strong line of ships. If you consider the Terrapin a smaller version and the Valkyrie a larger version of the ship, that means that a lot of building the ship out would be kind of cookbook stuff. They wouldn't really have to reinvent the wheel to make this ship. So it could be relatively fast, and therefore it could find itself sliding into an open slot that CIG has in their production schedule. So this could show up sooner rather than later. But it does highlight the problem of quantum interdiction is insufficient right now. Quantum disruption is also kind of sketchy at the moment. We need more modules that we can apply to different ships, which of course means we need more depth in ship modules than what CIG originally outlined and has since kind of not really done anything with. there's a lot of work that needs to be done on Star Citizen at a very basic level, and the ship kind of highlights some of those problems. A lot of work that CIG needs to do, but it is a pretty fair ship. The only real change that I would make, the only thing that if CIG were to say, what do you think? What would you change about this ship? I would probably add just a couple, maybe 4 cubic meters of actual cargo grid space in the ship. I'm sure we can find it somewhere. I would add that simply because it would make a little bit more sense to at least get away with some cargo on this ship. That's the only kind of oversight that I think that they built into the ship. It doesn't need to be a cargo runner. It doesn't need a huge cargo grid, but it should have at least a few cubic meters of cargo space where you can put a box down and it's not going to bounce around inside of the ship when it's flying. That's the only oversight in the whole design, honestly. I like the layout of the turrets. It's fairly well covered. It's not a hyperly overgunned ship. So, I mean, for what you get in terms of a better boarding experience, and it does pay a little bit of a trade-off in firepower, though arguably I would say against the Cutlass, it probably has more resiliency, even though it's a little less hot when it comes to firepower. It's solid. It's absolutely solid. And I mean, we've gotten so many of these drop ships. I mean, originally even the Prowler was supposed to be a stealth boarding ship, and then CIG kind of quietly walked away from that and called it a drop ship. But now we do have a very solid purpose-built boarding ship. So 2 thumbs up. Good job, CIG.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.